those are all the top headlines that we are tracking from the world of commodities. But Brent crude continues to remain in focus, and not just Brent crude, precious metal market also continues to remain in focus. Kanishka is now joining us with a roundup of everything that's happening in the world of commodities. Kanishka, over to you.
Lots of commodities to track today. Let's talk about Brent, gold and platinum today. Now, oil and gold, they're both facing very volatile sessions. Now, firstly, oil. Now, that was under a bit of pressure when we last checked, down about 0.2%. As US President Donald Trump, he has sent mixed signals on US's involvement when it comes to the Iran and Israel conflict, which is keeping traders on the edge. On the other hand, we have Fed, which has held rates steady but warned about inflation concerns, and otherwise too, analysts have warned of a $10 per barrel geopolitical risk premium, with fears that Brent could spike above that $90 per barrel mark if tensions continue to escalate in the Strait of Hormuz, which is a key energy choke point. On the other hand, we have gold, which is trading around that $3,375 an ounce level. It was down about 1% when we last checked, but still up 25% on a year-to-date basis. Now, the metal remains volatile after Fed Chair gave an inflation warning, though ongoing Middle East tensions, they are lending some support to the safe haven metal. Now, on the other hand, we have platinum, which is also in the spotlight today, surging over 2% to that $1,340 per ounce level. This is the highest level since September of 2014. Now, the rally is fueled by strong Chinese demand and market deficit expectations, though Goldman Sachs is cautious and has said that prices could retreat in the coming months. So, from geopolitical concerns, central bank signals, and the conflict in Iran and Israel, these are keeping commodities very volatile today.
Kanishka, thanks so much for joining us with all those details. But let's shift focus to the hottest topic in town, and that is the rare earth mineral supply issue. Rare earth minerals are the invisible backbone of modern technology, powering everything from smartphones and electric vehicles to defense systems and wind turbines. But behind their growing demand lies a brewing global concern, and that is supply bottleneck and geopolitical dependencies. Let's dive into the supply risks, strategic moves, and what this means for the global economy. And to discuss exactly this, we now have Mr. Satnam Singh, Senior Practice Leader and Director at Crisil Intelligence, now joining us. Mr. Singh, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us here on ET Now. I understand there are already reports which suggest that US and China have come out with some kind of solution to resume export of minerals, rare earth minerals, to the United States. But what is the current situation, and do you believe that this is only a temporary disruption in the entire supply chain?
No, thank you at the first place. Thank you for having me on this show. And yeah, so I think the current disruption, I would say, is indeed serious, and there is a larger strategic concern that we have on the current situation of export restrictions that have been put in by China, and they have been asking for a whole host of disclosures by the importers that these magnets would not be used either in defense production or re-exported to the US. And I think why I would say that this is a strategic concern is primarily from three standpoints. The first and the foremost is, as you rightly pointed out, there's a growing demand for rare earth magnets in India, and the key end users of rare earth, which I think you touched upon, was automotives, renewable energy supply systems, and consumer durables, right? So these three sectors really consume, I would say, bulk of the rare earth magnets. And clearly within automotives, the electric vehicles, which is where we are seeing a lot of demand, a lot of growth. A number of automakers have, planned a lot of new launches in the pipeline. So clearly, I think the growing demand really puts this issue as a strategic concern area for us, given the growth in automotives, and within automotives, particularly the electric vehicles. I think the second point is really the lack of indigenous supplies. So we don't have, or I would say we hardly produce any rare earth magnets within India, right? So, and we are entirely reliant on imports for meeting our requirements for rare earth magnets. And the third issue, which is emanating from the second one, is really the our over dependence on China, right? So of the 540 odd tons of rare earth magnets that we import, nearly 80% of that is being sourced from China. And China, as I just mentioned, because of these export restrictions, really puts us in a bit of a bit of an issue in terms of raw material security for rare earth magnets. So I think overall, the growing demand, which is expected to grow at around 20-22% for the next couple of years for rare earth magnets in India, and lack of indigenous sources of supply and over dependence on China really makes the current issue a strategic one from India's standpoint.
So this is a big problem not only for India but for the world. But Mr. Singh, if you can tell us then what is the solution that India has to this problem? I understand we have the resources, but do we have the ability and the technology to transform it into reality anytime soon? Because I understand the gestation period will be very long. And if we have to import, I believe China controls about 60 to 70% of the global rare earth mineral supply at the moment. So what other solution India has then?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. So China is really predominant in the entire supply chain of rare earth metals. So they control roughly around 50% of the global reserves, nearly 70% of the production, and importantly, nearly 90% of the total processing and refining capacity of rare earth metals lie within China, right? So they clearly are the dominant players as far as rare earth metals supply is concerned. As far as solutions are concerned, you rightly mentioned the gestation period, right, from exploration to production is quite long. So, depending upon the nature of deposit, depending upon the development challenges that we may face in, developing that deposit, and also the scale of operation we are looking at, right? So from exploration to production stage, the gestation period could be as long as 7 to 8 years. It could be even 10 years depending upon, as I was saying, the nature of deposit and the scale of operation. So I think while we really pressed hard in terms of developing our own resources, putting in investments in exploration and expanding production, refining infrastructure, but clearly I think our immediate requirements cannot be sourced indigenously, given the lead time that we see in developing these deposits. So we really have to scout around for meeting our raw material requirement overseas, and over there we have to really diversify our countries. So currently we are importing mostly from China, but besides China, we are importing from US, we are importing from Japan, we are importing from Korea. But there are other countries that I think we can certainly explore, like Vietnam, Malaysia, Australia. These are again potential sources for rare earth magnet supplies. So we need to explore, essentially diversify our import base or where we can source our requirements. And secondly, we have to really sort of develop our indigenous resources as well in the long term. I think the third point is really the recycling infrastructure, right? So I think a lot of our requirement can be met through processing waste of electronics and renewable energy systems. So if you put in the required recycling infrastructure and process waste from these end users who are near the end of their life, that will also help us, meet our requirements. So I think a mix of developing our own indigenous sources will be a long-term thing, developing recycling infrastructure, and scouting for overseas assets, which can, help us in the short term in meeting our requirements, will be really helpful. And I can sort of cite an example of Japan over here. Japan in 2010 invested in a company in Australia which was into rare earth magnets, and then they reinvested in 2023 in that company again. And today, if you look at particularly the light rare earth elements, so Japan is sourcing nearly 90% of their light rare earth elements from this particular one company in Australia. So I think acquiring assets overseas, striking long-term offtake agreements is clearly the way forward in the immediate term for us to secure our raw material requirement.
So India clearly needs to work on diversifying its sources of rare earth minerals, but we have spoken about its impact on auto sector and especially electric vehicles. But apart from EVs, which other sectors are likely to be impacted if the problem lasts for some more time?
Yeah, so clearly, as you mentioned, that wind turbines uses a lot of rare earth magnets, and solar panels also use some form of rare earth magnets. So besides automotives, renewable energy supply systems, including wind turbines, they are likely to get impacted. And then consumer durables like speakers, washing machines, laptops, these again use quite a bit of rare earth elements. So these are the sectors which are likely to get impacted, I would say, besides automotives.
Several factors likely to be impacted if there's no permanent solution to this problem. Mr. Singh, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us here on ET Now and helping us decode what the outlook is for the sector going forward. But let's shift focus to our next segment, Did You Know? And today let's talk about soybeans. This humble bean is a true multitasker, powering not just our diets but also our vehicles, homes and even makeup kits. Soybeans are a protein powerhouse enjoyed by humans in forms like tofu, soy milk, soy burgers, and even soy sauce. But they also serve as superfood for livestock, with over 70% of US soybeans going into animal feed. But that's not all. Soybean oil is used to produce biodiesel, making it a part of the green fuel revolution. Plus, soy and its byproducts find their way into everything from plastics and candles to crayons, cosmetics, and even paint. Versatile, sustainable, and powerful, soybeans are more than just a bean. That's all the time we have on this edition of Commodity Central, but don't go anywhere. Newsroom coming up on the other side.